This is the strongest Mage PvE build in all of Deepwoken. It allowed me to easily solo all 50 waves of the Diluvian without dropping below 2 bars. Not to mention producing such insane damage that I managed to clear problematic waves like wave 48 in just a matter of seconds. Not to mention, this build can of course get insane times on other bosses, being easily able to farm stuff like Ferryman, Pivonon, and Chaser. So today, I'm going to be explaining all 4 variants of the Tempest Tyrant PvE build, as well as their stat orders, and finally how to solo Diluvian with the builds. There is currently a full progression out on the version 1.0 of this build, so if you want to know what I did specifically to progress it, make sure to check it out. There will also be a full solo Diluvian run with this build uploaded very soon, in case you also want to see what exactly I did on each wave. As always, make sure you join the Discord if you want the build maker link, like and subscribe because I'm getting so close to 50k, and join my PvE guild. Anyways, let's get into the build. Starting off with the Tempest Tyrant v1.0, this is actually a slightly better version than what I progressed in the prog, just because I've optimized the stats to give you a little bit more health and damage reduction. So this will be the build that I say the full stat order for, since every other build is a slight change to these stats. Alright, so for any Tempest Tyrant build, you can of course use literally any race in the game, but Vesperian is the best if you have a spare slot lying around. On the starting screen, you want to invest no points into Gale and pick Attunementless. This is because we're going to manually unlock Gale later. For your starting boons and flaws, going Steadfast is required just so you have as much armor as possible. With Steadfast combined with the Armor Conserver talent and possibly an Armorer ring, you will literally never run out. I managed to do multiple wave 50s and not once did my armor drop at all. So your final oath on this build is going to be Dawnwalker. Origin is Deepbound ideally. Armor is Ignition Deep Delver. This is for the insane amounts of resistances it provides. And your bell is going to be a corrupt payback, of course. So you want to immediately invest points into willpower until you hit 20, then go all the way to 50 fortitude. At this point, you're going to want to also equip a shield just so you can get Turtle Shell and Knight's Rally. Then you go to 50 willpower. Then from here, you go to 30 strength and 30 intelligence. This is to get Lose Your Mind and Berserk, as well as all the intelligence cards. This is the optimization I made since the progression that allowed me to gain more fortitude points at the end of the build. So after this, you get 80 willpower for Heretic Sutra, then go to 90 fortitude, then you can go to 100 willpower, then you want to go to 94 fortitude, or until you're 1 point away from powering up, because at this point I highly recommend going to the surface because you're going to need to unlock Gale Breath, and you can get a lot of extra talent hands by doing the extra talent hand quests. It's very useful for making sure you get the pre-shrine right, although this build has a fairly easy pre-shrine. So once you've done that, you go to 100 fortitude, get 1 charisma, 1 agility, 1 gale breath, and now you do not want to Shrine of Order right now. The most important thing for the build by far is that you go to Shrine of Chance and you guarantee the Human Architecture tree. This is because you need to reroll a common card to get Brick Wall on this build. If you don't do it, the build is ruined. But once you've made sure you've got Brick Wall and all the other important pre-shrine cards that will be on the build, then you can finally Shrine of Order with all your stats ending up at 22 ideally. Now it's simple, you just go to 25 charisma, 25 agility, put the rest into Gale Breath until you get 80, and with your final 6 points, you get to 81 fortitude. This will just give you level 5 reinforced and more scaling on reinforced armor. Therefore, Pen's going to be doing a lot less damage to you. For your traits, it's pretty obvious. Just 6 Song Chant and 6 Vitality. Max damage and max health. Now let's go over the mantras before we go over the talents, because these are the mantras that you'll be using on every other version of the build. Except for one version, but I'll discuss what's different with that when we get to it. So you'll start off with Tornado. This does massive single target damage. The one issue is you can't M1 or use other mantras while it's casted. Then you get your bread and butter mantras of Astral Wind, Gale Punch, and and Twisted Kicks. These 3 mantras, they have good hitboxes, you can cast them super fast, and they deal a ton of damage. Next you get your 2 oath mantras, Blinding Dawn and Radiant Dawn. This has insanely good AoE, and Radiant Dawn is a low cooldown mantra that can block break humanoids. Then Wind Gun is your last mantra. By modifying this with a Blast Spark, you have a lot of crowd pierce, which is incredibly good for the higher waves of Diluvian. Wind Passage is your mobility mantra. You could leave this out in theory, but it's always nice to have something to run with. And then your support mantra is going to be Reinforced. Gives you a good chunk of damage reduction and a little bit of extra damage. And these are the mantras you're going to go on every build, but your oath mantras will change for a certain subversion that I'll discuss a little bit later. Coming over to your talents, I've already added Neuroplasticity just because of the wild card. Well, let's go through them. You'll get Conditioned Runner. This just gives you free healing whenever you're sprinting. It's incredibly good and is always free. Reinforced Armor, plus 5 HP, and Reduced Pen. Brick Wall is super good, not a scratch. I'm pretty sure this means that your Wind Passage will always go max distance. You get a World Without Song for better damage. Perfect Flash, this way your mantras are dealing 25% damage at the start of rounds. You want to get Carnivore, you don't have to worry about food. Defiance, Champion's Regalia. Eureka to get free ether back. Fishman, Exoskeleton to the finish for defense. Lose Your Mind and Piercing Will, this just means your Heretics and an Insanity downside counter are really powerful. Thresher Claws, Scuba Drowner and Blood Iron Spirit for even more HP. Blood Iron also helping to keep your armor nice and topped up. Speed Demon, this just gives you a little bit more M1 damage to certain targets. Time to Go is more mobility whenever you kill something, and Kickoff increases your climb height. Grand Feast is free. Giant Slayer is more damage and you'll always be proccing it against monsters. Same with Underdog. Tough Love increases your M1 damage by a bit. But now we've got the best tree of cards, the Ether Adept tree. You want to get Mantra Permanence and Magical Resolve, as well as Ether Conduit. Because of Magical Resolve, and partially because of Mantra Permanence, you're going to be proccing the Ether Adept cards very often, therefore you're basically always getting 10% more damage on your mantras. It's incredibly powerful. You'll have your Gale Breath unbounded for free, Aftercut is extra damage, and Inhale raises the damage a little bit more. Wind Step is nice for mobility, Up Roll is good for squibbos. You want 11th Hour on this build because unlike Ground Zero 2.2, you can't cast mantras for free, so against some Shadow Attuned stuff, you might be low on ether on occasion. Last Resort is more damage. Old Habits and Breathing Exercises is just free HP. Armor Conserver is the other armor reduction talent. Berserker gives you 20% defense whenever you knock something, it's crazy good. Full Reset pairs well with Corrupt Counter. Replenishing Knockout is nice. Ready or Not isn't actually required. The thing is, you're pretty much always in danger in the Diluvian, because the Diluvian puts you in danger itself. So you're not really proccing this. Auto Scream is 25% more damage in an AoE, it's crazy good. Natural Armor Tree is some damage reduction. Hot Potato is 5 HP if you do the quest. Turtle Shell, as long as you equip a shield, you can easily get these 2 talents, and they're free damage reduction. Spectre, Phantom Step, and Apparitions, it's just better Gale. Then you want to get Unfazed and Grasp on Reality, and that caps off all the talents you'll need. Just realized they went 1 talent over, we'll just remove Champion's Regalia. You don't really need that much. But yeah, this is the build, it's a very perfected build. Now coming down here, I'll just add the Oath stuff as well as the quest talents. You want to make sure that you're getting Heretic Sutra before you Shrine of Order. This will just provide you a little bit more damage. Don't miss it like I did. Alright, now coming over to the weapon. Your weapon on this build is going to be a 3-star weight battle axe, simply because you can posture break humanoids significantly easier. And your enchant is Detonation, just because whenever Detonation procs, the splash damage will hit all the mobs around you. It's really good. And then for your rings, as long as you're using a Diver's Ring and Ring of Casters, you'll have everything you need. The other rings don't really matter, although you can use an Ishian's Ring if you're good enough, because it will make your counter significantly stronger, as you're taking 25% more damage, which buffs counter, and then you're outputting 20% more damage, so it's basically 45% stronger. Now at the summary, we have plus 170 HP on this build, which is insanely high, making the Tempest Tyrant one of the tankiest builds in the game. Anyways, that's the stat order and everything you need to know for the base version. Now I'm going to discuss how the other branch versions work. Version 1.0 takes agility. This can provide you healing from conditioned runner, as well as extra mobility from time to go and kickoff, and M1 damage from speed demon. However, changing around where this one agility point is invested allows other versions of the build to be made. The first is version 1.1 that uses a curved blade of the winds. The modification here is really simple. Instead of going 1 point into agility pre-shrine, you go 1 point into medium weapon instead. This allows you to use a much better weapon in terms of raw damage. You can use it for either PvP, or if you want to have a really good crit for the Diluvian, the Curved Blade of the Wind crit has insane amounts of PS on it. Version 1.2 takes no agility and invests that 1 point nowhere else pre-shrine, essentially allowing you to get more fortitude points post-shrine. This is essentially a max defense build. The other change you need to make is just going 1 intelligence pre-shrine and then getting 30 intelligence post-shrine. The final version is actually quite a bit different. Version 1.3 is essentially a noob-friendly version where you don't need to get Dawnwalker and you have a whole lot more defense than any other Diluvian build. You don't take agility and instead get 1 intelligence pre-shrine, and then just get 30 post. But the main thing is, you'll get to 50 charisma post-shrine. You have just enough points to make this possible. Doing this will grant you the Vision Shaper Oath, which is actually really good for the Diluvian because of Illusionary Realm. Illusionary Realm, which can last for up to 1 minute, can allow you to not get knocked even if your HP reaches 0. This is very good for the Diluvian because it means you essentially can't die for 30 seconds as long as you health pack. So I 100% recommend using version 1.3 if you aren't as confident with the Diluvian, although its damage is a bit lower since you can't get Blinding Dawn or Radiant Dawn from Dawnwalker. But overall, it's still a very good build. And before you ask what's the best, the answer is any of them are the best apart from version 1.3. In the end, just make whatever you want. As for the Ground Zero build, both of them can solo Diluvian, but this build is just a little bit better. However, if you still want to play Flame Charm or already have the Ground Zero build progged, then you can still 100% use that build. For modifications on any mantras, you just have 3 perfect and 3 crystal lenses on Wind Passage with no other modifiers, a Blessed Gem on Radiant Dawn, Blinding Dawn, Tornado, and Twisted Kicks, and then put a blue gem on everything else. The reason for a Blessed Gem on these 4 mantras is because depending on the wave, you'll end up spamming them. You'll always use Blinding Dawn at the start of every wave, Radiant Dawn is good for humanoids, Twisted Kicks has insane burst damage, and Tornado just lasts quite a while. Therefore, it's likely you'll end up proccing Blessed Gem while Tornado is still active. Anyways, with all the explaining out of the way, let's get into how to use this build to solo the Diluvian. The first major tech is using Blinding Dawn at the start of every round. You just want to make sure you're standing at the center by the mechanism. Blinding Dawn is extremely deadly at the start of rounds because Perfect Flash provides you 25% extra damage, and you're essentially weakening everything that spawns in, making them far easier to kill. Radiant Dawn is incredibly useful for approaching either humanoids because it'll posture break them, or anything lightning attuned. If you don't know, once the Radiant Dawn animation starts, it can't be cancelled even by lightning mobs. For your main bread and butter combo on the build, Twisted Kicks and the Gale Punch into Astral Winds does a lot of damage to a lot of targets. You essentially want to spam this out as much as possible whenever stuff gets grouped up. If you want to maximize your Tornado, you want to make sure that you're using counter right after you use it. Just because while counter's up, you can start to take damage that you'll soon heal from, and since you can't use mantras while Tornado's up anyways, using counter while Tornado is active is the perfect timing. For Wind Gun, you want to make sure you're using this on crowds or to outrange targets. It's an infinite PS mantra with a lot of hitboxes. Next, if you're getting low or a little bit worried, you can use Wind Passage to run away from stuff, and essentially just stall for your counter cooldown. Then finally, you want to make sure you're casting Reinforce as much as possible. This mantra is good damage reduction and good extra damage. There's no reason to not be using it, especially in difficult rounds. It'll save your life. Okay, but what about the no mantra rounds, I'm sure you're wondering? Well, it's simple. UM1. Because you'll either have a Battle Axe with Detonation or a Curved Blade of the Wind, you can very easily deal with targets even if you can't use mantras. And again, you can also use counter to get some extra damage. So essentially, don't worry about the no mantra rounds, this build can handle them very easily. But let's discuss the two hardest waves of the Diluvian, Wave 48 and Wave 50. Wave 48 is only super difficult if there is a lightning attuned Widow. What you want to do is stand at the center, hit everything with Blinding Dawn, then you want to try to build up as much damage as you can on counter, since that'll weaken everything massively and even pick you up some kills. Remember, you can't just outrange things with Tornado. A lot of people say this wave is harder than Wave 50, however, I managed to pretty easily clear it in as little as 15 seconds, which is insanely fast. For the big one, Wave 50, you essentially play it the same as you would Wave 48, except you stay in the other Shrine of Chance. You Blinding Dawn at the start, wait for stuff to group up, deal damage with counter, and spam out your mantras until you start getting health packs. You can actually use an Ishin's Ring to make your counter deal even more damage, although you need to be good enough at the Diluvian to justify this. But if you've taken everything I've told you to do, and made the build properly, congratulations, you have just easily soloed the Diluvian. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this incredibly strong mage build. Make sure to keep an eye out for the full Diluvian run I'll be posting with it very soon. I hope you guys enjoyed, make sure to like and subscribe, and join the Discord for the build, as well as my PvE guild. Check out some more PvE content, and I'll see you all next time.